Hello everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have one of, if not the biggest guest we would have had on the show and will have on the show. We have Step 2 side Dulwich Hamlet, owned by Peter Crouch, their manager, Paul Barnes. Let's get into it. I'm really excited for you to hear this one. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Non-League High Performance Podcast. Today we have one of the biggest guests we've had on the show. He's one of the most experienced managers in non-league football. He's had coaching roles at Chelsea and the mighty Millwall before moving on to coaching and managerial roles within non-league football at the likes of Welling United, Margate, Ashford United, Greenwich Borough, Staines Town, Guildford City and Redhill. And now he has one of the biggest non-league jobs in South London. He's Dulwich Hamlet manager, Paul Barnes. Hello Paul, how are you?
Evening gents, thank you very much for having me.
So we kickstart by asking the same questions that we ask everyone. What is high performance to you?
High performance is getting people to, for me, is getting people to work in line with each other. I think it's getting everyone to buy into the culture that you set within your environment and getting everyone to buy into that culture and trying to achieve the same objectives. So I would say that was high performance for me.
So for you, how do you get high performance at every single training session and match days then?
Yeah, I think it's in terms of, say, our environment at the moment, in terms of coming in, is trying to show what your culture is, trying to get your ideas across, trying to show people what you're all about. For me, I think it's showing that consistency in terms of you're the same person day to day, whether you're doing well or you're not doing well. I think it's being consistent in your approach, consistent in your methods, and showing people that you're genuine even in times of adversity. I think nowadays as well, if you're talking about non-league football as well, I think you've got to be that a manager that's kind of 24/7. It's not to say you need to know the ins and outs of what players are doing, but I think you've got to buy into who the people are that are playing for you. So I say all the time to the lads that I manage people, I don't manage players. It just turns out that those people are football players. And they've all got different objectives, whether they're playing at a certain level of non-league football because they want to make a certain amount of money, whether they're chasing the dream of being a professional footballer, or whether, and I say to my lads all the time, it might be from a mental health perspective that, you're playing because it's your happy place. It helps you escape all those other issues and stresses in your life. So kind of when I first came into the Dulwich job and I took over, it was kind of outlining that for me, I see especially non-league football, but I see football as that in terms of you're playing for one of three reasons. One, you've got aspirations to be a professional and climb into the Football League. Two is it supports you financially. You get well paid, so you're paid to do a job, so you must do that job. Or thirdly, it's your happy place and kind of it takes you back to being that 10-year-old, maybe playing in a school playground. And let's be honest, I think everyone needs that element of it. So again, my job is making sure that I'm helping players, achieve those objectives, whether it's trying to help somebody achieve the dream of being a pro, whether it's making sure it's that happy place that they can come and, escape all of the issues that they've got going on, or, it's letting people know that they've got to work to a standard because they're getting paid a certain amount of money to deliver. So, I see that as my job, and I've got to make sure that I'm working with those players as people to help them know that they're going to get all the support they can from myself and the staff. And again, we're going to work with them. I say all the time, people say about, playing for a manager or working for a manager. I say it's working with. I don't like using the word for. It's working with, and it's about, for me, players. It's probably been a little bit of a shock because I know we've got some experienced boys that have been at a very good level. I think managers, and I think that the game's changing. I know yourself, AJ, and what you do at Fisher. You're working with these lads to get to know them as people, and I think it's about empowering people. And nowadays, if you want players to buy into who you are, you've got to empower them and give them that trust. To know that they're going to go and deliver for you. So I think that's what we're big on with us at Dulwich, that's for sure.
So if we talk about key core values, if I say to you, what is the Pools team on a Saturday or during the week training, what would you say for any young manager out there right now that's trying to be where you are today? What would your advice be?
Yeah, I always say I think that the team or the club, you want it to be a reflection of who you are. So I'd like to say, and I've taken a long time to build a reputation. So I'd like people to associate words such as professional, hardworking, honest, that humility as well in terms of the way that we deal with people. So again, whether it's good or bad, we're still the same. We're consistent. In terms of our actual playing style, we want to be high intensity. I go back, and I make, no secret about it. I'm proud. I'm a working class lad from Southwest London, who grew up in a pretty tough background. And so I'm quite personable when I share those experiences with players and let them know that, my background's quite similar, in terms of anything that I'm ever going to achieve in my life, and what anybody's going to achieve comes from hard work first. So it's about coming in, working hard, earning that respect from people around you. So I'm no different. It's not just about getting the players to work hard; it's the staff who've got to work hard too. And kind of any reward or success you achieve is a result of your hard work that you put in. So words like diligent, I would like to think that people would associate with us, in terms of adaptable within the game as well. So, tactically, I like the tactical side of the game, to be honest. So, it's almost, people might say, game of chess, to use a cliche. But I like trying to adapt my method or my tactics, to maybe how you've approached one game throughout it. So, again, I'll study a lot. I watch a lot of video. So again, being well prepared, we're big on analysis around us, but again, it's from a footballing perspective, it's high intensity, working hard. We want to dominate the ball, so we're a possession-based side. Again, we want to excite. If people, when we were talking to the board and chairman and anyone around the club, getting to know their thoughts of what Dulwich is. I mean, I've had my own perception of what Dulwich is. I mean, I was lucky enough. I got a good relationship with the previous manager, and I used to go and watch. And from years back, everyone always associated Dulwich with being a good footballing side, a club that tried to play the right way. So it's making sure that we stay true to those values, because the club is a footballing club. But I say all the time, obviously, we get great crowds down at Champion Hill, and I say, look, these people come to Champion Hill to be entertained. They want to be excited. So we want to piece together an exciting team. So the way we set up is to do exactly that. Sometimes it might not be great because the game might be quite open. But again, we laugh and joke and say, well, at least people get value for money. But I think it's finding a balance. Especially it's my first job at step 2 as a manager. So it's finding a balance of when you can be that exciting team. And then trying to find a balance of when you might have to just shut up shop and say, well, we don't have to be exciting today. We've just got to maybe make sure we keep the back door closed and we'll take a 1-0 win. So it's finding that balance, but we definitely want to be an exciting team that gets the ball down, plays, and people want to come and watch.
I'm going to ask you this. Obviously, before you took over the Dulwich job, someone else was in charge before, and he's done an amazing job. And there's no right or wrong answer to this. But how far away was the club from the core values that you said to us earlier?
I don't know if they were far away. I think it's very difficult in terms of when you've been a manager for that long. In terms of Gav and Junior were brilliant in terms of keep building teams that had that brand. And then it's tough because you get caught in between, and yourself, because you want to stick to your values in terms of being that exciting team, but then you've got to get results. So it's that double-edged sword. And maybe sometimes as a manager you can get caught in the middle. So you sacrifice maybe a little bit of being exciting because you need to grind out a result. But then you find yourself, and I've been there myself, where you're 3 or 4 games down the line and you're thinking, well, we want to be exciting, but we need to win, or we need to get a point. So maybe it was a case of that, where it just obviously it transpired where the club made the decision to move the previous manager on. I mean, from my own perspective, Gav was someone that I've always respected, really, really highly. Someone who I've always had a good relationship with. He was actually my first phone call when I got offered the opportunity to go into Dulwich. Just to let him know that obviously I've been contacted, obviously with his blessing, kind of just trying to do the right thing. You go back to what our values are in terms of honest, being a good person first. So we made sure that we got off on the right foot. So I did what I thought was right to make sure that I give him a call and give him the courtesy to let him know that the club had asked me to go in.
So obviously there's issues in the club when you walked in there. How did you find the first issue, and what did you do to make sure that you tackle the issue first? Because obviously the results has changed dramatically from the time you've taken over.
Yeah, again, I think it's quite nice because obviously fresh approach, different set of eyes on it. So again, my perspective completely different. I mean, so I went in the week. Obviously, I went in and I got approached. I went and watched them play on a Tuesday. I think tactically how they were setting up with the personnel they had, and again, it's not to say what previous people, their decisions wasn't right to them, but for me, I just felt that the squad, what we had at our disposal, was suited to a different setup in terms of formation. So I went in and I said straight away in my first meeting that, look, moving forward, I'm going to be going with a different setup. So we changed system. And then obviously my approach being very personable, being quite, I'm not a screamer or a shout. I'm a talker. So again, boys all of a sudden having this person that, is talking to them, getting to know them, and then not really losing his temper. And I did say to them, what my first game was Margate at home in the FA Cup, and we actually had a man sent off after 20 minutes. And I remember my team talk clearly, and it was you've all got to know me over the previous week. You can tell I'm very calm, composed, collected. On the side, I said I like to think that if there are times when you're thinking it's all going to hell, and I use the example of if you're going to war, and you turn around and everybody's losing their head, and you think, oh, wow, would we really follow that person into battle? Would we want that person leading us? So I said to the boys, I said, look, just keep your eyes on me. I said, if anybody's starting to panic, worrying that we're down to 10 men, look at my body language, kind of read me. If I'm losing my head and jumping up and down, it's a time to panic. If you look at me and I'm pretty calm, and I'm composed, take your lead off of that. And to be fair, it was quite funny. Some of the boys coming after the game have said, do you never lose that coolness? And I said, well, let's be honest, if you're looking for guidance, you don't want to turn around and see someone jumping up and down, because all of a sudden you're going to start to panic. So kind of that's probably a calming influence, I would say, that I've brought to the club and to the squad, and kind of just having a completely different maybe outlook on it. And my approach is maybe what the players needed. From my perspective, they've been brilliant in terms of buying into who I am, what the staff are all about, and how we want to work. So, I mean, touch wood, long may it continue.
Obviously, you've worked in the past with some top teams and top players, but obviously going into Dulwich must be a different kind of aspect for you, where you're meeting with ex-pros, boys that are looking to get into pro leagues. What was your thinking the night you got the job, and what was your mindset on that night, and what did you think the boys would think of you, and what did you think the outside world would think of someone coming from a step 5 job into a step 2 jobs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite lucky. I mean, I've put the years and time in over the career. So, you would say lucky, but you have worked for that opportunity. But I do know, obviously, I did know quite a lot of the squad when I was coming in. So I've had a few of them played for me in different roles before, so they knew what I was about. It's quite funny. One of the boys I've actually known since he was a baby. I used to look after him. He's from where I grew up. So having known you, and what it's like. Football's a small world, so you only need to speak to a player that's played for you, and they'll give you a bit of a background to see what he's all about. So kind of I had a little bit of a leg up in terms of knowing some of the players. They knew what I was about. They knew kind of my approach and my style. Again, I think you still go in a little bit apprehensive because the previous manager was in there for so long, and he's had boys that have been really good servants and been really, really loyal. And you've got to earn their trust, you've got to earn their respect. So you're thinking, I've got to go in, I've got to deliver in terms of what people were associating. So professional, diligent, well planned in terms of what we're doing. I think you don't want to come across in the first, especially the first experience, and you're there babbling away and they're saying, oh, who's this in front of you? So kind of I pieced together my first kind of opening meeting speech and kind of just outlined what the objectives were for me in the first week. And it was quite a good start because straight away you could see boys were kind of locked on and engaged. That's not to say all the players straight away bought into what we were about. It's taken a lot of hard work. And again, it's earning trust, building relationships and kind of gaining the respect of the group. And I think we've done that over the time. People have seen that we have been exactly what we said, consistent, so we've not said we're one thing and then we've acted another way. We've tried to be, fair. It's all about inclusivity. So I make it about everybody, whether it's staff, squad, everybody around the club. So I think, even though big responsibility because it's such a big club, we've got so many people, there's so many little facets to it. But it's one that, everyone wants to be part of it. And for me, I'm all about, inclusion. I want people to feel that they're part of it. So for me, it's a great fit.
So what opportunities do you take to find out if a player is actually a team player or not? What do you look for?
Yeah, again, I think you actually, in terms of the attitude, the way that they communicate, you can see it. And there's always going to be times, you know yourself, you work with players, that there's going to be little dips in form. There's going to be times when maybe selection, you go with a different player and then you explain. I mean, I always, I take great pride in my communication. So I will explain to players reasoning why I'm going to go with a certain starting lineup or why boys might not be in a squad. I think as long as you take that time, explain to people your rationale, your decision-making process, I think that, again, it keeps the respect of the group. I think as long as you're working, again, staying true to your values.
So when you're recruiting for players into Dulwich Hamlet now, how would you know if that player is actually living by the core value that you've already laid in place? How would you obviously find out about them?
Yeah, to be fair, I think now. I think everyone, whether it's social media or most people got a profile. I think you can speak to players, you speak to previous coaches, managers. You can find out about players. I'm not one. I say it all the time. I'm not one just because somebody might have a bad experience of somebody. I don't jump on a bandwagon. So I like to draw from my own experience. So somebody might have an opinion about a player or a person and say, "Oh no, he's not for me." I say, "Well, you know what? I can't speak on it because I've not experienced it myself. I always treat people how I found them. And if someone's treated me well, I can only speak well of them. From my perspective, I like to meet players. So I would rather have a face to face and just get to know them. I want to get to know them. I want to find out about their background. Where they're from. Family. I want to see if we can actually help support them away from football as well. So it's letting them know that if they're going to be a Dulwich Hamlet football player, we're not just taking the player to play for us on a Saturday. In theory, we're taking on them and their family and anything that they've got going on. So I think we can offer in terms of support. Like I keep saying, it's not just about when you see them on a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I'll be touching base with players Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, as well, just to make sure everyone's got stuff going on. Life is hard at times, but as long as I think that we're showing that, again, consistency in terms of being good people, and I think if that's going to be replicated, so yourself, there'll be some boys that all of a sudden start being a little bit more communicative, start opening up, and then also they start asking the questions back. So I would always say, how's the family, and then all of a sudden players, within that short space of time, like, "Oh, Barney, how's your family? How's the little ones?" As they start to see them at the game, and again, it's infectious. It rubs off on people, and then they're the right kind of people.
That's good. So questions: attitude or talent?
This is where I'm going to probably cop out, just because, attitude is obviously it's needed in terms of if you want to get the opportunity, you want to be consistent, you need the attitude. I'm a sucker for talent. I love it. In terms of trying to work with players that maybe other people have deemed, "Oh, you can't work with them, you can't get the best out of them, they've had their chance." I like trying to prove people wrong in that respect, but I also take great pride, and again, that's why I think myself working at Dulwich is a good fit, because it's a place where they've been known to unearth talent, which I want to do. I want to find the next one to go into the Football League, the next name to make it. So again, it's finding that balance. I think if you help shape a player and show them that attitude, without the attitude, your talent won't come through. I think that's needed. I think if they've got the right mentor or manager or coach with them, I think they'll understand that. So I think it's you allowing them. You can show your talent, but you've got to have the right attitude in order to do that. So, if you're going to push me, I'd go attitude.
So for me, for a player with a great attitude, but the talent is not the best, how long would you give him to mold into your team and your playing style?
Yeah, I think you know what, and again, I'm a little bit of a madman when it comes to kind of planning and my outlook on it. Kind of we've got our way that we work. So in terms of our system, and the way that we would come in and approach it, especially coming from kind of day one, we have our roles that we see players playing. So for instance, if you're using a modern day, it's a 4 or 6 in your system, and you'd have kind of roles and responsibilities of what you see them doing. So I think in terms of if you're saying it's a player with great attitude, if he's not as talented, as a match winner, he's still effective. So if you're talking about, them understanding their roles and responsibilities within your system, I think again that's the key part for me because a lot of players will come in and have great attitude, and then the manager might say, "Oh yeah, great attitude, but I don't know what he brings to the table." Well, if you don't know what he brings to the table, that responsibility falls on you because you need to have a clear plan of how the player fits in, how you're going to play, how he's going to be effective. So for me, again, it goes back to that diligent planning. Kind of, we've got the way that we would want to work. So, the player with great attitude and doing kind of A, B, and C maybe, he's going to be in one certain position. So then the next player can do, D, E, F. You know what I mean? And it just links the team. I think you've got to have that. Yourself. You've got the ingredients have got to come together to complement each other. So I think it's key that the manager thinks it through and it's not just throwing players together and hoping something comes of it.
Yeah. So obviously you can't name everyone. From non-league and professional game, what gaffers do you look up to and why?
You know what? It's going to sound really boring and cliche, but I don't just look at football. And I'm probably going to surprise a lot of people. I actually take a lot of my kind of my own qualities and role models from my own personal situations. So in terms of life, navigating through life, it's tough enough. So again, I think different journeys, different chapters of your life will teach you different experiences. I'm big on, I'll speak to different people that might work in psychology. It was quite funny. I was speaking to a new connection last night who actually works in Gaelic football, and just trying to find out in terms of team dynamics, performance mindset stuff. So to be fair, I don't just look at football. I look across the board. I've been quite lucky that I've worked in some really good environments, and that's not just within football. I worked at an independent school in central London, where again you look at leadership in different ways. I now work at a university, so you're looking at again, it's managing people ultimately, and trying to get them to perform, whether it's for an exam, getting through a project, working on a campaign, working towards maybe a case study that they're working on. So I'm a bit more open minded. I don't just watch football. I think now the game is evolving. I think you have got to be switched on and in tune with so many more elements of the game. So it's not just about sending 11 players out there and say, yeah, come on, we're going to do the business. I think so. Obviously, ideally, you've got to be that motivator. So you've got to have that approach in terms of being able to motivate. But there's so many components now. I mean, I enjoy piecing those pieces of the puzzle together. So I like my analysis. I like my psychology. I like the tactical side of the game. I like the technical side where you're working with players. I like the physical elements. What I try to do, I try to work smart. So I try to get a good team around me and empower them. So, we're quite lucky that we've got some really good staff with us, and, I let them lead. It's going to be times that I don't have to be the leader. I might be supporting because somebody else has got the skill set that I don't have. If it was from a physical point of view, I wouldn't go in and start giving someone fitness, strength and conditioning advice. It's not my bag. But I would then empower my coach to say, this is your area, this is where you're the leader. I can support and I can guide it to work in line with what we're doing. But no, I'm very open-minded. So I'm not, probably people come on and talk about your top level managers, and say, oh yeah, that's who I look up to. I mean, I like to look at real life situations, real life role models. And to be fair, it will seem cliche, but there'll be some really good people out in your local community doing amazing things. And I try to take a bit from everyone, and without blowing smoke, even the work yourself you're doing at Fisher. You know, there's not many people who go in there and get the results and perform and develop boys and produce the way that you have. So, you know, I mean, I look at lots of people. I look at different levels of the game. So, you know, that's not the reason you asked me on this. So I can pick you up. But in terms of, it's nice to know because, you know, I think it kind of, it's frustrating because I've been obviously at every level, and people only talk about, you know, highest level, or, you know, people in non-league only talk about the conference prem, and then there's kind of this closed circle, which for me is rubbish, to be fair, because there's some great people, and it's about, let's have it right, it's about luck, and about opportunity. So from my point of view, you know, if it wasn't a phone call and results didn't go well, you know, I wouldn't be managing at step 2 at a club like Dulwich Hamlet. So luckily, touch wood, you know, I've been blessed that I've got the opportunity to go and show that I'm good enough to do it. But there's lots of good people out there that are doing great work. So, you know, it's not just about looking at a certain elite level. I think there's some great people out there working all the way through the game within their local communities as well.
So, obviously, away from football, how do you develop yourself to make sure you've got the best you every single training session, every single match day?
Yeah, again, I think it's great. I've got some good staff. You know, they keep me honest. You know, they ask tough questions. You know, they will challenge. You know, I don't surround myself with kind of yes men, for instance, and just tell you what you want to hear. I surrounded myself with a team of staff that will challenge, will ask me why. Also, again, just to keep kind of that personal element and keep you grounded. You know, my family is probably the best motivator for me, because everybody, you know, will wake up in the morning and think, oh, here we go again, you know, it's another long day. I'm not that way inclined, to be fair. I wake up every morning with a spring in my step. I say to my players, you know, if you're not seizing the day and making the most of the 24 hours you got and kind of really appreciating it, you know, what's the point? So from my personal point of view, my family, you know, is the best motivator for me. You know, it keeps me focused. So, you know, there's times when I probably don't switch off when they want me to, especially obviously having 3 kids, and my missus is always on me to say maybe you should close the laptop or come off the phone. But again, you know, they know what I'm doing it for, is to make them proud. And I think ultimately that's why we will do it. So from my perspective, you know, having that focus of making your family proud, being a good role model for your kids, you know what I mean? Anything that you're going to have as well, you've got to work hard for. I say that all the time. And then kind of away from that, having people that challenge you, I think is good. You know, and it's nice to have those conversations. And, you know, everybody, you know, so I think sometimes will put themselves in a safe environment, you know, and just go along, or have people around them that just go along with whatever they say. I'm very lucky that I've got staff that I trust, you know, people that are good friends away from football as well, that will say to me, I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? Why are you doing that? You know, what's the rationale behind it? Have you thought about this, you know, as another option? And there'll be times when I might think, you know what, that's some really good information. You know what, maybe you're right, we should maybe go with that. Again, it's not just about my, you know, my say and my decision, it's about including my staff. But then there might be times when I say, yep, I understand what you're saying, but I'm adamant that I think this is the best way that we should do things. And again, it goes back, I'll tweet a lot, and especially around football, and I always say it's a we, you know, it's not a me, in terms of it's not my decision, it's our decision. And I think that's key, and again, going back to your culture and what you create.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. That was absolutely brilliant.